And right now, we are monitoring the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, New York City, where deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife are being arraigned on drug trafficking charges. This comes after their stunning capture by the U.S. military. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts Taylor Riggs, Brian Brimberg, Lou Bassanese. Who would you want around after this past weekend? That lady? Well, you really want her around 24/7. Kennedy, host of Kennedy Saves the World, an all-around superstar in some late 80s neon.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I'm bringing it back.
No, it never went away.
That's absolutely right as well.
I love you. President Trump says his decisive action in Venezuela will help restore security across the Western Hemisphere.
We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations. We're going to have presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground.
Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. Does it? But production collapsed under corruption, mismanagement, and political repression that was prior to Nicolas Maduro. We have to go back to Hugo Chavez for that. The backlash entirely predictable. The far left rushes to defend a socialist strongman. You know the No Kings protest? Well, they love a king because their king has been deposed, while Venezuelan exiles celebrate accountability and the promise of freedom. Ideology always tells you where people land and what they protest for. The bottom line, this wasn't nation building. It was about energy security, regional stability, and reasserting hemispheric control. Let's go to the White House where Edward Lawrence has the very latest on this. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Dagan, yeah, like you said, we are watching to wait and see when Maduro and his wife make their first appearance in court. Now, oil prices overnight, they've remained pretty steady on this. Analysts are saying that this actually could be a good thing long term for the U.S. in terms of gas prices. A stable flow of Venezuelan oil on the global market reduces the price of a barrel of oil, and that reduces the price in turn of a gallon of gas in the United States. Now, the reserves, 303 billion barrels is what Venezuela has. You said it, largest in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. It's 757 times more than the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. At today's prices, that would fetch about $17 trillion. Senator Rick Scott, in the last hour or so in a news conference, says that this will be good for America.
We're going to have a new trading partner. People we know, our friends and our family, are going to be able to live their dream in Venezuela. We're going to have lower oil and gas prices. We're going to have a great trading partner. This is going to be outstanding.
So Maduro let a lot of the pipelines fall into disrepair for oil in Venezuela. The Venezuelan oil is a favorite type of heavy oil that the U.S. Gulf Coast refineries like to process. Democrats try to spin this as a transaction move by President Trump to enrich U.S. oil companies. The president does say that the oil industry, with help from companies around the globe, will help rebuild impoverished Venezuela and make it wealthy again. Now, in the U.S., overnight price of regular gallon of gas remain the same, $2.81 a gallon. It is down from a month ago. It is down from a year ago. We'll have to see if that trend continues over time. Back to you, Dagan.
Thank you, Edward. Edward Lawrence at the White
Thanks.
House. Lou Bassanese, I'm so glad you're here today. So in the intro, and we've heard regurgitated over and over and over and over again since early Saturday, world's largest oil reserves in Venezuela. No.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, there's a lot of hot takes over the weekend that are a hot pile of you know what. Because if you look at it, let me ask you this question. If you could go back in time and play poker with Hugo Chavez, would you trust him? Absolutely not. And he's the one that raised that reserve number to 303 billion. It was about 50 to 80 billion before that. So first things first, that headline number, completely wrong, not factual whatsoever. Second thing.
So can we get rid of that graphic?
Yeah, second thing.
But doesn't Venezuela have a lot of oil reserves? I mean, maybe it's not the biggest,
but
it's
the
pretty
U.S.
big, right?
U.S. conventional and unconventional has 200 billion barrels. So we have
well, it's
more.
a lot. It
so
might
it's
just
a lot.
not be the most.
Now, I'm just correcting the record because I've heard a lot of stuff over the weekend that nobody knows because it's been under control of socialists for a quarter of a century.
What's another good
And
point?
those numbers were inflated, to your point,
Right, they're self-reported
by
to OPEC.
Hugo Chavez. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're self-reported to OPEC, so who trusts self-reporting organizations? You shouldn't, right? Trust but verify. The other thing is it's a heavy crude, very heavy, almost pavement that hasn't dried. It's so thick. It's hard to refine, hard to process. It commands a discount. People that want to refine it have to actually pay $7 to $10 less for it. Otherwise, the economics don't work. The other thing is, like you pointed out, this entire industry in Venezuela has been left to decay. It's like finding the old Cadillac that's been sitting in the yard for 20 years. And yeah, it's got good bones, but it's going to take a lot of work to revive that. So there's no immediate impact to supply. There's not going to be a glut. There were people out predicting that oil would open today below 50. Not a chance. Then the whole Permian's not profitable at $50 a barrel. So we're going to find new equilibrium. I think long term, as Edward was saying, this is a very strong benefit to the United States, energy security, independence, another provider, and it takes some supply away from China. That's my thoughts.
I'm staring at you.
Hey, girl. So it's,
Well, because I'm not going to ask you a
you can
question.
ask a question.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to know what you're thinking about what went down over the weekend, because I don't see it as regime change, don't see it as nation.
It's not regime change yet. I mean, the problem isn't what happened this weekend. The problem is what could happen in the unintended consequences. The liberty-minded, that is always the greatest concern because, you know, you can wave the mission accomplished banner, but then still be in the region for $3 trillion and a couple of decades with nothing to show for it. So that's always my biggest concern. But, you know, what we have to look at here is what was the military strategy? And it's, you know, China not only having access to the oil reserves, but also the minerals. And that may be the more valuable component here. Our military needs the rare minerals that are coming out of Venezuela. China has known that for a long time. And China put the kibosh on the rare earth minerals they were exporting to the U.S. as a tariff play and a way to interfere in what the U.S. military desperately needs. They can find that in Venezuela. The problem is China has choked off so much of the supply in terms of manufacturing and refining. And then you have drones coming in from Iran, and you have Russian air defense system. So, you know, this three-legged stool was becoming very problematic for the U.S. military, and this plan had been in place for quite some time. Now, if the Trump administration is able to execute these quick and dirty strikes, as they did with the Iran nuclear facility, and have no intervention after that, then that is a totally different form of foreign policy and military action than we have seen, certainly in our lifetimes. And if the U.S. is able to secure the minerals that we need for military and AI, then, you know, will it be worth it if it doesn't cost us blood and treasure? You could make a big case that says maybe.
Dagan, you're reading the same note I'm reading.
Yeah, it's the Venezuelan oil narrative is pure theater. The real reason the Pentagon approved Venezuela critical minerals and adversary expulsion.
What's interesting in there is a line that stands out. The decision to strike was made when the Pentagon concludes that the convergence of Chinese resource control, Iranian weapons manufacturing, and Russian military integration exceeds acceptable risk parameters. So you authorize what has been deemed military necessary, but then the political cover and messaging that's palpable to all of us is drugs and oil. And so you have the critical minerals aspect. Brian, I also punt this to you as well.
Tantalum. Don't forget the tantalum.
It's a great mineral.
It really is.
We
In my breakfast area.
Wheaties, breakfast of champions. We talk about China in that region as well. Trump talked about the Monroe Doctrine, the Don Roe Doctrine.
That's his corollary, yeah.
And this sort of is interesting because we talked about the Panama Canal and making sure that China didn't control that. He wants to reassert U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere. That's where sort of these rare earth critical minerals come into play as well, making sure that the Western Hemisphere is Western, not Russia, not China coming in. But then the oil play is also interesting to me, and it's not, even if it's not 300 million, even if it's 50 to 60, and yes, heavy sour, not the light sweet. But it's enough that companies like Chevron and Exxon could get excited about, yes, they have to invest billions. Yes, they have to be guaranteed safety and that their assets won't be seized. But I think long term, even if we are facing an oversupply, that is an opportunity for more revenue and more production. And so I'm wondering if it's just all of these factors
That was a
come
huge
together.
punch to me.
Yeah.
It's like a massive
Right?
football was like 10 yards long.
Well, you're out of the playoffs, so I thought I'd give you a football.
You know, we had a winning record,
went there.
9-8. Can you believe the Vikings ended at 9-8? That's a pretty good record for that team. So Venezuela. So I understand all the mineral oils. I agree. There's a whole bunch of debate there. Whether they have as much as people say, I don't know. How long is it going to take? I heard one number that you need to put in $100 billion to get the 4 million barrels a day. That's a lot of money. Okay, but I want to go back to one thing you said in that piece, which is the U.S. military accompanied law enforcement into Venezuela and without really any problem got Nicolas Maduro, and he's sitting in Manhattan right now, okay, after reasserting control of the Panama Canal, after putting Brazil on notice, after, well, you can debate El Salvador and CICOT. There's a lot going on in the Western Hemisphere. And President Trump has indeed said, you're not doing this stuff in our backyard. That is a world-changing reality after what happened in Afghanistan 4 years ago, okay? The fact that instead of bailing on an air base, we are going into Venezuela to apprehend a criminal and bring him to justice with overwhelming supremacy, overwhelming operational excellence. So I think this is, to me, there's economic ramifications of this, and we'll get into those over time. I actually don't think it's about the oil as much.
Agree.
And I actually don't think even it's really about the minerals. I think it's about reasserting what happens in our hemisphere and what say we have over it. And I don't think that's hegemonic. I don't think that's illegal. I think that is absolutely the policy the United States of America should have. Well, and it just happened.
Okay, but, you know, to your point, so for the people, because you're getting pushback from the hardcore libertarians and the far left progressives on this whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about hegemony, think about it, because at some point, you have to make a decision. Do you want Chinese hegemony? Because they do.
Yeah.
Like, they want global hegemony. And they're
Someone
like, no,
will-
we'll take the
someone will
Eastern
have
Hemisphere,
it.
we'll take the Western
Yes.
Hemisphere. Like, we'll get into all the places we need to in order to box out the United States.
Yeah.
So, yes, you have to be, at some point, realistic about it. And, the realism does not dovetail with propaganda. That's what we always have to push back against. But, we have to consider the realities here and how does it affect us as Americans and families and parents and as individuals.
One question raised by a number of people over the weekend, just privately, people who are concerned about China, is what's the U.S. going to do when China rolls into Taiwan? On what ground do we stand at this point? Just a question. Some notes coming out of the courtroom where Nicolas Maduro is wearing a black T-shirt over his orange top, towering over his counsel, uncuffed with hands free. He says he was captured and detained, wanted to go on, but the judge interrupted him and says there will be time to argue this case later, but not now. You deposed tyrant. Taylor, what's happening with Novo Nordisk?
Hard pivot, but get excited. New year, new me, new pill. Everyone excited for our weight loss drug? Let's do it. Jumping today, you're up more than 4 and about 0.25%. So last month, the Wegovy pill was regulatory approved, and today it hits the market. Lou, quickly, we come to you on this because we've talked about if there's more maybe acceptance of a pill versus an injectable. Novo is, of course, the first out, but Eli Lilly, which you've been bullish on, should get a pill any coming months now. How do you think about all of
Yeah,
this?
patient compliance is always an issue with medicine and prescriptions. I think the pill makes it easier. It also makes maintenance easier. You do a regimen on the shots and then move to the pill. But I would say this, I'm a Eli Lilly shareholder. Novo Nordisk is a value trap. This is a stock that everyone's staring at and saying, look, this is really cheap, trading 14 times the earnings. They were the first to market, but they're getting passed by Eli Lilly because Eli Lilly's drugs have superior science. They target more than one receptor. They'll also have a pill out on market sometime this year, and they also have a pipeline that is much more diverse and strong. So I'd say in a two-horse race, I'm betting on Eli Lilly over Novo Nordisk, although in this market that is stretched in valuations, Novo is attracting a lot of value investors.
So the president talked about how the federal government was going to supplement some of these drugs for lower income Americans. Does that include the pill? Because they were talking about the shot, but does that include? It
should in time, but Novo Nordisk is also, their patent expires in China soon, so they're starting to preempt that and front run it by offering lower prices. Eli Lilly has further patent extension, but I think you're going to see prices come down. Volumes are going to keep going up significantly. I mean, these are drugs that sell $40 to $40 billion a year.
So prices and BMI all coming down.
Yeah,
Wow.
at the same time.
Everything.
New year, new me.
We'll continue to follow Nicolas Maduro in a federal court in Lower Manhattan. He has officially pleaded not guilty to drugs and weapons charges there.